Hello.
Mr. Nic
How's it
Davis, how do
going?
you do, kind sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you? What's new?
Doing outstanding.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
What's it's been 2 weeks, huh? So you anything exciting in your world? Any retiree ventures?
Well, heartbreak
Oh, okay.
in the sports realm.
Oh, okay.
My baseball team, made it into the playoffs.
Yeah,
I was so happy, the Brewers.
yeah.
And then they were eliminated in the first round by the New York Mets. It was 1-1, and they were ahead 2-0 going in the ninth.
Oh,
And they got one out on the Mets, and the Mets came back and scored three.
wow. Ah, that is heartbreak.
Battering.
That's hard. That's
Yeah.
that's hard. I mean, did you going into this, did you think they were contenders in the playoffs? How far did you really think that they could go? What was your feelings?
At the beginning of the season, I said they'd win 89 games.
Okay.
The experts were saying no, about 75 to 78 games. I said, no, you guys are wrong. And that they'd win the first round of the playoffs and then be eliminated. They wound up winning 93, so they were better than even I predicted, but they were eliminated in the first round.
Oh,
So, it wasn't too far off what I saw for them. But they're a young team and they're very good and they're on the rise. So it's just kind of this funny thing. It does take some a little bit of adjusting or digesting when
yeah.
you put a lot of emotional investment in a team and then they're eliminated.
Yeah. Absolutely. It
Uh,
definitely does.
and then your beloved Oakland A's are done with their time in Oakland.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, a year or two in Sacramento and then on to Vegas.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is, yeah, yeah, that's I mean, as a kid, that was kind of the only games I ever experienced. I did, of course, living in Seattle, go to some Mariners games.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's so weird to think of such a fixture in the Bay Area there.
for sure.
Um, Times just people, teams moving on.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't know. I think the general sports world is a lot more fluid than it used to be, which is I don't know if it's a bad thing. I'm just noticing.
I don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think it's a good thing, but I don't know if it's a bad thing either, other than, us, you know, being creatures of change, of habit and not
Yeah,
liking change. Um, but I mean, in the college realm, it's really hard to see such drastic changes.
right. Yeah,
My
not going to happen.
my Washington Huskies, um, they had a repeat this weekend of the national championship game against Michigan, and
Oh
they
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah, yeah.
got to redeem themselves out in Seattle at the home field, and got to beat Michigan. So that feels great, but at the same time, it's kind of like they did it with, I think, only 2 or 3 players that they had last year on the roster and a different coach, and so
In
yeah.
last year.
Yeah, yeah, they lost all but 2 or 3 players, and of course the coach went to Alabama, and he lost. He lost that day, so that felt kind of good, I guess.
Yes, for sure. I like it when Alabama loses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, don't quote me. They're like the
Yeah,
Yankees. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No kidding, no kidding. So,
Well, also, by way of transition, in the last 2 weeks, I have read an entire book
oh,
for this podcast.
for this. Oh, okay. Was this the you had mentioned? Okay, strong men. Yeah, interesting.
Ruth Ben
Mhm.
Ghiat, Mussolini to the present.
Got it. Okay.
Every day I was absorbed in this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a perspective changer. It really is. Not
Hmm.
radical. because I think all of us think of Trump as being, not all of us, obviously, but is it a majority of Americans? I think it's a majority of Americans think of Trump as being an abusive and cruel and deceitful person. He does have his followers, obviously,
Yeah.
but impeached twice, adjudicated guilty on a civil charge of rape, um,
Yeah.
34 felony counts, guilty.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Not a great rap sheet.
right. And so this book, do you mind if we just go into it?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Great. Because that's been what I've been thinking about the last 2 weeks is this topic. We're now October 7th, so we're less than a month away from the election.
Uh-huh.
And the danger that Donald Trump continues to pose, is so severe. And the fact that he's still being considered as a legitimate, normalized candidate is so uh, scary um, for anybody that has any sensibility about civilization, really,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and the free world and the open society and democracy.
Right.
He's a threat to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So this book I've been threatening to read for 3 years,
Yeah.
4 years. I heard about it and I subscribed to her. It's not a podcast. What is it? When you write.
Oh, Patreon.
Patreon. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That's not exactly it. It's
Or is it um
close
blog?
enough.
A
Huh?
blog? A blog or
Yeah, blog.
yeah.
Blog.
Okay.
Yeah. Called Lucid.
Oh.
In which she talks. I'm familiar with her now over 4 years of reading, in which she talks about authoritarian playbook,
Mm.
that which is uh, habitual and regular amongst dictators, would-be dictators,
Right.
um, autocrats, and she's
Mm-hmm.
a scholar of it. She's at New York University. And Mary and I went and heard her speak about, maybe 3 weeks ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was marvelous, as we expected. There was another guy there, too, who has a book called The Death of Democracy,
Okay.
um, ringing the alarm bells.
Yeah.
And it reframes Trump by talking about the traits that he has in common with other authoritarians and autocrats and dictators
Okay.
in a very scholarly way, very thorough way. Her work is so thorough that
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. It's called Strongmen: Mussolini to the President. It's not an overly creative book, but that's not what her goal was.
Mm-hmm.
It's slightly dry at times.
Yeah.
That's quibbles with a nonfiction. I'm a creative type of guy, I like poetry and
Yeah.
lovely stories and that sort of thing. And this is nonfiction.
Gotcha.
But she does deep, in-depth studies. I've got their names written down here. I'm going to be glancing over here on occasion. Mussolini,
Mm-hmm.
Hitler, Gaddafi,
Okay.
Pinochet, Putin,
Mm-hmm.
Berlusconi, who was in Italy, Saddam Hussein.
Mm-hmm.
She talks a little bit about another guy whose name I forget, and Idi Amin. I remember him killing a lot of people. He was in an African country, and Donald Trump.
Okay.
And she talks about traits in common of all of these to the extent that she calls it an authoritarian playbook.
Mm.
That which they have in common, that which they do as their strategies to acquire and maintain power in
Mm-hmm.
an excruciating manner, which is to their own benefit and does not. Ben- I was as I was reading the book, I was thinking kind of cancer.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
Cancer gets into the body and it expands and it expands
Mm.
um, to the expense of its host, right?
Right.
Until it kills the host.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what'd you say?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good I like the analogy. I mean,
Yeah. I do too. Yeah, I knew you would as a nurse.
it's dark, but it's sad. It's true. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll read you what the uh, how many is it? One, two, three, four, five, six um, earmarks are that they have in common.
Okay.
Then that you can understand an authoritarian by these. And then I'll give you an overview, and then we'll go through them a more thorough way, and we'll also talk about resistance.
Okay.
Work for you?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Coming to power illegitimately. And yes, Trump was elected, but also lots of use of you know money from the Russian mafia, etc. Um, Appealing to quote unquote a greater nation.
Mm. Yeah.
Propaganda. She calls it virility. She has a chapter head called virility, but I don't view virility as a necessarily bad thing. I in my in my own mind I was reframing it to machismo,
Oh, okay.
machismo, and then corruption, concluding with violence.
Mm.
And she goes chapter and verse through coming to power illegitimately, a greater nation, propaganda, virility slash machismo, corruption and violence. She goes through that chapter, a separate chapter on each one, and talks about how these dictators have these traits in common.
Right.
Some of them were more one than the other,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course she brings in Trump,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, he fits in. It fits him like a glove. This whole thing.
Yeah. The authoritarian playbook.
Authoritarian playbook.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a very sobering book,
Yeah. I
as
bet.
you can tell from what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
But then the call to action, the resistance, is can be inspiring.
Mm.
You and I doing this episode 14 of our
Right.
Brambled path, is part of the resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll go through these. Does that work for you?
That works. I like it.
Hallelujah. First off, where is it here? Yeah. Coming to power using illegitimate means. She talks about a lot throughout the book. She talks about the personalist mode of power. Personalist. Uh,
Personalist. Okay.
yeah. In other words, it's like Germany was Hitler. Russia is Putin. Italy was Mussolini. Chile was Pinochet. America was trying to become Trump. At least Trump was trying to bend it to that.
Right.
So it's more, she says, the personalist mode of power in which the private, legal, political, financial, and other needs of the leader take precedence over national and party imperatives. in the
Mm,
expenditure of time and energy among party and other political elites in the form of policy.
interesting.
I'll read that again for those who are listening at home in the comfort of their own sofa. The personalist mode of power in which the private, legal, political, financial, and other needs of the leader take precedence over national and party imperatives on the
Hmm.
expenditure of time and money, time and energy among party and other political elites in the form of policy.
Yeah.
So um, that sentence is actually picked out from a blog
Uh huh.
entry rather than from the book. She uses the word personalist a lot, but I saw it in her blog this week. Um, the Jack Smith revelations that came out, I think that was early last week, um, like a 95-page argument against Trump's guilt
Hmm.
with the January 6th and the election
Right.
denial. Um, she says that this is perfect authoritarian stuff, perfectly plays in because a lot of senators and a lot of people in the White House were working. They weren't working for the government anymore. They were working for Trump,
Right.
and his denial of the election.
Yeah.
The
Right.
person takes precedence.
Yeah. That, yeah. That's
And then
scary.
she goes into, Kristallnacht. I can't remember what happened with Kristallnacht with Hitler, but there was an incident of resistance to his ascent to power. It was called Kristallnacht. I think it had something to do with breaking of glass or something like that.
Okay.
Do you know what it is?
I don't know. No.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody watching probably does, but
Kristallnacht.
Kristallnacht. And Hitler sees the moment and says, "Well, look at these people being uppity, so to speak.
Right.
Um, so we're going to have to. I'm going to have to take dictatorial powers
Yeah.
because of this."
Right.
You know, he increased his stranglehold on the country. This was like 1930s somewhere,
Yeah.
and the Holocaust hadn't yet begun
Right.
when that happened.
Yeah. So basically, I see you resisting or challenging me or my authority, and now I'm going to um, discredit and shut you down,
Right,
essentially.
right.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about Trump's rhetoric in the campaign recently, he's saying, we're going to have a month where the police are going to have unbridled, or maybe it's a week, I can't remember. They're going to have unbridled impunity to smash, people who are shoplifting or something like that. They can be as cruel to them as I want them to be, as they want to be.
As they want to be. Okay.
Yeah, the cops can. Yeah, uh, Putin. I can't remember what all these guys did, but they all, um, for instance, um, Pinochet had a bloody coup.
Mm,
Mussolini had a bloody coup. They had legitimate forms of political representation before these guys took power, and they had bloody coups in which they took over.
yeah.
Trump had massive help from Russia to take power. You know,
Yeah.
um, to seize power illegitimately. I remember hearing a reading about it was Gaddafi. Um, I think it was Gaddafi. Am I right? Um, People didn't really know who he was
Right.
in Libya,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden he says on a national broadcast one morning, "Well, the government has been so evil, has been so misrepresenting of your needs and your wants and your legitimate um, aspirations that for the sake of Libya, I've taken power."
Right.
And people are like, who?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so coming to power is illegitimate and with this personalist um, mode of power.
Hmm.
It's going to be me.
Right.
You know, I alone can fix this stuff. All these experts, all these people with PhDs, these teams of people with PhDs, they don't know anything.
Right.
All these MDs don't know anything about COVID.
Right.
I've got it for you, even
Yeah.
though I didn't do so well in college and don't have a master's degree. Okay. So they come to power that way. And then they make this appeal, make America great again,
Right.
you know? And that's not just Trump. Hitler said this, Mussolini said this, Putin said this, let's restore the luster of the Soviet Empire,
Right.
which collapsed under Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin,
Hmm.
you know. Let's uh, Pinochet said the same thing, um, and so on,
Yeah.
appealing to nationalistic fervor and pride, which then defines great. Well, when was America great exactly, Trump? Was it when we had women in subjugated roles?
Right.
Was it when neither women nor blacks had the right to vote? Was it when we had slavery?
Yeah.
Um, what are you talking about? Make America great again.
Yeah.
I think of times that seem better in some instances than America is right now. You
Yeah.
know, um, I think of um, civil discourse
Yeah.
being more respectful at
Hmm.
some point. But there's no you don't want to regress back to a previous time.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, just think of, I just think of like, the big topic of immigration, right?
Uh-huh.
And when you think about that in America's history, like make America great again, and well, when has immigration rates ever been as low as they have been in the last 20 years? I mean, so what version of make America great again are you looking for when it comes to immigration? Because, you know, uh, our immigration rates are pretty well regulated for quite a few years or decades now. And in the early, centuries of America, we were founded by immigrants. Like we are a nation of immigrants. Um, so I always find that interesting and a
Right.
little bit fascinating because we choose to put this strain on immigration and focus on it, which is really just a deflection of you know how troubled America has become, especially in these urban centers and populations where it is so diverse and there is a lot of safe havens for immigrants and refugee efforts. And so then they just say, well, look at how bad it is there because they've got, issues with crime and homelessness and this, and it's easy to point the finger at immigration because that's where these people have found, you know, a place to live. Um, and it's just fascinating to see because those cities, those areas, those places that have had these troubles have had those same troubles since massive amounts of immigration were occurring in American history. Um, it, it,
Yeah.
they're not, these things do not correlation is not causation necessarily.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
anyway,
Thank
yeah,
you. We the the difference now is that the people coming over to Ellis Island were white,
yeah, right, yeah,
and now it's Latin American,
hmm
and Muslim. Oh,
right, right, or Eastern European, you know,
yeah. So
yeah,
so Trump, Mussolini, Hitler, Berlusconi, Putin, they come to power, personalist brand of power, and they appeal to make America great again and similar. I mean, it's just amazing to read Ruth Ben Gotz. It's like in the 1930s, Mussolini was saying, "Make Italy great again."
yeah,
And then the next thing is propaganda. And it's always interesting to me whenever they refer to "quote unquote" the dark state. Is that what they call it? The dark state,
dark state, deep state. I don't even know. Deep state, dark state,
deep state,
deep
deep
state. Yeah,
state. Thank you. The deep state. That's it. Thank you. They're referring to the government in the United States,
yeah,
and they make it out to be this dark, mysterious, bad thing. It's coming up now with the hurricane rehabilitation efforts
mm-hmm.
over Helene and upcoming Hurricane Milton.
Right,
Um, the efforts and the right wingers. I'm sorry to use that language, but are saying, well, obviously FEMA just wants to enrich themselves and give the money to Ukraine, stuff like that.
right,
As opposed to, I don't know that FEMA is a spectacular organization. I don't know that
yeah,
personally, but
right,
deep state, and then the other thing is fake news.
right,
And this stuff I see it on Twitter all the time. People using these terms, which is propaganda terms. It's
right,
authoritarian terms.
mm-hmm.
Distrust your government and distrust the liberal media.
Yeah,
It's important, in my opinion, to not just buy everything that the government does and not just buy everything that the media does.
right, yeah,
Um, Mary and I are more about print journalism than broadcast journalism.
uh-huh, yeah,
And when I do watch broadcast journalism, I do like to watch PBS.
oh yeah,
Um, feels a little bit more legit. So
mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you should be uncritical, but
Right,
he throws it all out. Deep state, fake news, and listen to the officially sanctioned mouthpiece, which is Fox.
yeah. You know, that always troubled me because I don't want to listen to one news or the other,
Yeah.
and I find it interesting to see and hear things from the other sides or whatever side, right? But this constant need to discredit anything that doesn't align with your agenda, and I mean, they both sides do it. Both sides are
Hmm.
doing it, and that's just it's sad, but that's the world we are in now. Is that um, everything it's all fixed and it's all fake until it's your news that fits your agenda, and it's no longer fixed and fake. Um, and I don't know. I mean, it's with social media these days, I feel like one little thing, one soundbite from a news or another person then gets replicated by tens of thousands. And, that just take this Helene thing, for example. One person on Fox or whatever may say, where's the Biden administration? Where's Kamala Harris? And next thing you know, you have a bunch of people who are in Tennessee or North Carolina, and they're on TikTok or on social media, and they're doing a little snip or discussion about, oh, look at this devastation. Where's our government? Where are these people? And it's like you're repeating the same thing, but it none of it is based on actual facts of what's happening. I mean, there's just like any natural disaster that's occurred, it's a state of emergency. It's federally declared. All the resources that can be made available are being made available. You know, are you expecting your leader to be on the front lines with a shovel and a backhoe? I don't know. I mean, where do you draw that line of, they stopped campaigning and now they're here working on the disaster relief efforts. I don't know what's realistic, and I just think that whether it's and I mean, to be fair, um, it happens both sides. I mean,
It does, but
yeah,
I'm saying that with
like,
the Trump administration and their use of lying, it's much
oh yeah,
worse. Much
absolutely,
worse. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I think it's perpetuated and then parroted, by the
yeah.
news, by the
Mhm.
authoritarian.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, here, people who I know very well support, Harris Walls. They're not, I don't hear them parroting the same little, I just don't hear the same parroting of things necessarily of,
Mhm.
what the other person is doing wrong or where their flaws are. Yeah, it's just
Right,
not being perpetuated the same way. So it's
right.
interesting. It feels very much like, well, and I don't know, maybe this is part of the playbook of creating a culture and and like you said, this personalist agenda where it's like I am a fan of this person, not their policies, not their, what they look like on paper, their qualifications, that kind of thing. I'm just a fan of them, even though qualifications aren't there, even though, and it's just, it feels very much like a cult following than it does hey, this is a person whom I think represents me and my ideals and my values the best.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And what I wrote down here, derived from Ruth, is a feeling of being overwhelmed by the lies. You can't keep up with them.
Mm.
The power of boldly asserting the same thing to the public several times to the extent that they believe many fictions as if they were true. Then people become, this is the key thing, indifferent to what is true and what is false,
Oh, yeah.
so that you
That,
have the death of truth.
hmm. Yeah.
You know, well, that's just your perspective. Well, you're getting that from the liberal media.
Yeah.
2 plus 2 is 4. Well, anyway, that's part of the Trump thing. Somebody said that he lied 14,000 times while he was in office. The Toronto Star and the Washington both kept um, a running record of all his lies and misrepresentations.
Yeah.
And that most recent debate with Kamala, they said that 90% of what he said in that debate was false.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that's propaganda. We could come to power illegitimately. You use this personalist model. You appeal to a greater nation, make America great again, etc.
Right.
And then you run the propaganda strongly, before, during, and after, so that people are literally saying, "Yeah, it was definitely a rigged election in 2020. This definitely is stolen.
Yeah.
And then I heard this hilarious thing, hilarious but not hilarious. Nancy, the January 6th insurrection was brought on by Nancy Pelosi. Oh, really? Did she have? Was it a suicide attempt then? Because they were trying to hang her.
Yeah.
So anyway, then comes the machismo, which Ruth Ben Ghiat calls virility. Um, I call it machismo because it's a more accurate word, in my opinion, for narcissistic and cruel behaviors. Um, Sexual exploitation of women. Putin posing with his shirt off.
Mm.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Gaddafi and Hitler and Mussolini, or and Idi Amin, had sex slaves. Mussolini had sex with 4 different women every day. I'd like some access to his Viagra. And as soon as he did, he then claimed ownership of their lives.
Oh my
You know,
gosh. Yeah.
they thought they were coming in and going out, but no. Now, non-disclosure agreements, harassment of them and of their family, and intimidation for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
Think
That
about
doesn't
the
sound familiar at
resources.
all.
What'd you say?
Oh, that doesn't sound familiar at all.
Right. Think about the resources that are required to do that.
Ugh.
Trump paying off the porn star,
Yeah.
allegedly raping more than 20 women, the menacing behavior around girls' beauty pageants, the whole Jeffrey Epstein
Hmm.
darkness,
Right.
you
Hey,
know?
I didn't I see something this week where he recently said nobody wants to see Joe Biden on the beach, but he looks good. He would look better than Joe Biden on the beach or something with his.
Yeah.
I I saw something. I was like, well, why are you talking about how good you would look and how people would want to see you on the beach?
I
Anyway,
saw that. I saw that.
like, what are you talking about, man? Like, yeah. Anyway, but to your point, the posing without your shirt on, sort of, yeah,
Yeah, him saying, I remember during the first campaign, 2016, he said that I got no problem down there, believe me. I'm talking about his penis.
his crowd
Remember that?
size, his crowd size.
Yeah, his crowd
Yeah,
size, yeah.
yeah,
But ay, 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 ay. It's just, um, but this is part of the authoritarian playbook,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
That's,
It's
I
part of the
mean,
authoritarian character.
it's so alarming. And I mean, when you put it into all of these authoritarians, dictators, autocrats, that's that's really disturbing. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, do you see how this is all fitting him like a glove?
Well, and it also, one of the things it just really makes me sad is how easily society can fall for it.
Yes,
Like, you know, there's so many historical examples of this in this playbook, and yet it's still, there's not a, what are the protective factors as a culture and a society from such manipulation?
exactly. Thank you. That's what I've been thinking about for the
Yeah,
last 2 weeks. And we will get to the resistance part, but it is an ongoing question. It's an ongoing question. And I'll go forward here to the rest of it. Do you want to?
yeah, yeah.
We're at 39 minutes. Corruption. Trump made more than $1 million per year just from having Secret Service having to pay to be at Mar-a-Lago and the Trump Towers in New York City and D.C. and at his New Jersey golf course. The Secret Service had to pay every time they went there, and he was there always.
Right.
They had to keep paying. He made over $1 million a year. I heard 1.5 million.
My gosh.
Putin has the Russian mafia at his disposal. Basically, the Russian government is the Russian mafia at this point.
Yeah.
All these authoritarians wound up in mansions and estates beyond those homes of the average national leaders. Gold-plated estates. While they all portray themselves as men of the people, they all live remotely and have vast sums of money.
Hmm.
Money laundering is common. International bank accounts and shell companies keep the money hidden. The sawing to death of Jamal Khashoggi, an American journalist, by the Saudis was shielded from consequences by Jared Kushner, leading to his being paid $1 billion by the Crown Prince.
Wow. $1 billion.
Yeah,
Jeez.
isn't that something?
Yeah. That's wild.
They have a lot of money, apparently, the Saudis. All
They
that
do.
oil.
They do.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I don't know if I told you this, but I lived in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia when I was 14, 15 years old. And
Really?
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well, definitely a topic for another time. But yeah, they're that whole beheading, sawing. I mean, it's a real thing. The not tourists, but the expatriates we called it Chop Chop Square. Like there was kind of in the downtown near all the souks and markets. There was an area that was part of like Central Square of downtown of Central Riyadh, and it's been where they've been doing they're carrying out justice for hundreds of years.
Makes me
And
want to throw up.
yeah, it's yeah. Obviously, I was a teenager and I was not ever in that area, but there were some expats that had to see it to believe it, I guess. And yeah, it was disturbing for them. So
I would say.
yeah,
Oof.
but
That's
so I can
awful.
only imagine that journalist, that whole situation, and yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
horrible. But and
So
then they paid
corruption.
$1 billion.
Yeah, Jared Kushner.
Yeah,
Yeah. Jared Kushner is just a ghoul.
follow the money.
Yes. So, corruption.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're in it. They're in it for their personal enrichment. Violence. Putin pushing his opponents out of windows. Even poisoning his opponents in England. I heard about a um, father-daughter pair who were in London who had done who had somehow written something negative about Putin and they were poisoned.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, to death. Kim
wow.
Jong Un does this. He's a big.
Yeah, I was wondering about the book if Kim Jong Un was in it.
She doesn't get into Kim Jong Un or Stalin,
Yeah.
and those are remarkably closed societies. I was thinking that maybe she can't write up enough about it because those two societies are so closed.
Right.
It's hard to get information.
Yeah.
We know that Stalin killed 10 million people, which is worse than Hitler by 4 million.
Hmm.
But just horrifying. Um, Trump's open agitation to violence during his rallies, his increasingly violent rhetoric during his recent presidential campaign, and his desire that immigrants at the southern border be shot. I don't know if you heard about that. He asked his advisors, "Well, can't we just shoot them as they're trying to come across the Rio Grande?" They're like, "Well, no, you can't just shoot them."
Right.
He wanted to. Pinochet,
Oh,
Pinochet had the disappeared. They called them. I don't know the numbers on
disappeared,
that.
huh?
Yeah, but it was vast numbers of people
Wow.
who quote unquote disappeared at his behest in Chile. And then, of course, the worst of all, well, Stalin, I guess, is the worst of all, but the worst of all people mentioned in the book is Hitler. with
Yeah.
his concentration camps killing 6 million. You know,
Gosh.
Trump reads Mein Kampf.
Right.
He's read it several times.
Yeah.
So it's just so that is Ruth's um, depiction of the authoritarian playbook. Coming to power illegitimately, the personalist mode of holding power, appealing to quote unquote a greater nation,
Right.
make America great again, make Italy great again. It, the rise and fall of the Third Reich with Hitler,
Mhm.
propaganda, deep state, fake news, having an officially sanctioned mouthpiece. So many lies that the public is overwhelmed and can't keep track of it anymore. Virility, which I call machismo, exploitation of women in
Yeah.
dire manner. Corruption, thoroughgoing. I mean, it's basically the purpose that these authoritarians have is for their ego gratification and for their enrichment.
Yeah. Narcissism. Yeah.
Narcissism, yeah, and violence. These are the earmarks, and Trump was held back in his first administration by more idealistic people than him. I don't know how the more idealistic people got involved in his administration, but people like John Kelly, doing what they could to, and Rex Tillerson, doing
Yeah.
what they could to sort of keep him um, restrained to the best of their ability, and how he just got off. How
Well,
he's
and I mean, and to regardless of agreeing with some of their views, Mike Pence to a degree
yeah,
even
yeah,
was, I mean, bless him for being a partner to that situation. But I mean, he at least had the sense to say, I validate the election, and the
yes,
results, and still, I mean, has stood up a little bit to some of that. And I think that's really important because one of the things I struggle the most with is not so much the red party, the Republican Party,
right,
or anybody who leans conservative, Republican, whatever, um, but the predominantly Christian um, Americans
mm-hmm.
who are willing to accept this person as their guy, their candidate, despite all of those things, because I just don't, I have, it's difficult for me to find how somebody who does not own their mistakes, lacks humility. Um, I mean, let's put it this way. I don't think there's an accountability or ownership to the point where he could ever feel that it's necessary for him to ask for forgiveness and for the Lord's blessing and those kind of things. Like, he's so far removed from that. And as anybody who's been around Christian faith, part of the process of growing and healing and becoming you know um in the image of the Lord, you just have to accept your humanness and kind of work on that. And there's none of it. It's yeah. No accountability, no ownership, no feel like I don't even repent for what? I've done nothing wrong. That's
Right.
just so hard. And it's so hard to see how many people on that side support. We do have a comment in the Black Raven meditation. This
Oh my goodness, that's the lovely. Hello, dear.
this says this conversation sparks a question in me. What qualifies one to govern? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Um,
Her nickname is Core. Corey.
cool.
Hello there, Corey. Good to hear from you.
Nice. But yeah, so what qualifies one to govern? Um, yeah, that's a tough question. I think it depends on. I mean, everybody's going to have a different answer on that, but
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
I definitely feel like for me, someone that represents, the general a general experience in America, especially in our country. That's who I resonates with me. That's who I feel qualifies. Like because I think about these qualifications, and I'm more and more leaning towards. I'd rather have somebody who feels like, you know what, I'm going to quit my day job. I'm going to stop doing this because I'm so impassioned about America or my community needing a change that I feel called to do this a calling towards this. And I mean, if you ran, you know, a falafel shop and you decided to go do this, like, you know, I think it ultimately comes down to a genuine desire to see better in the world around you. For me, and then from there, developing those skills, and you maybe already developed it, whatever your path has been. All paths can, I think, lead to being a part of. I don't know as an individual to govern, but then I also, on the side of that, what qualifies one to govern. Um, I definitely notice that in people who choose to be at the highest level of the public spotlight in this sense, they all tend to have a little bit of ego, um, and I don't know if it's just that people who don't have that don't want the attention, don't want to be in the middle of things. Um, so I don't know. How would you explain or define that, or what would you say? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, and such a thing as a healthy ego.
Hmm.
Um, but it's interesting when Corey asked. I had an instant answer, and then sitting here listening to you,
Oh, sorry.
a different answer has sort of bubbled up, which is the
Yeah.
first answer was heart and mind and experience.
Mm.
And then, I'm very philosophical in my orientation towards life. And,
Yeah.
and
I feel you
a,
there.
what'd you say?
I feel you there. Yeah.
Yeah. And a um, tradition that has survived for like 3,000 years in Western wisdom. I like Eastern wisdom so much, but the West talks about the three great principles of a life and of a community are the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Mm.
And you could spend your entire life refining what that means for you. But a person that somehow pursues and also embodies the good, the true, and the beautiful,
Yeah.
uh, and you don't have to run for alderman and be, Da Vinci, you know, mixed with Nelson Mandela and Jane Goodall.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but um, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question,
Yeah. Thank you.
Or
Um, but yeah, I mean, it is, I think it's a good point. I'd say that there's, what qualifies one to govern. And then in light of what our political climate has been, and probably beyond my age of understanding and my fourth decade of life, is we do tend to focus on more of what qualifies one not to be fit to govern,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
As we talk about, like these flaws in like identifying an authoritarian, and of course political candidates are notorious for this, focusing on the flaws of the other person,
Yeah.
and therefore those flaws make them not fit to govern. um, I definitely think having your mental wits and capacities should. But if that was the case, we would have had two different candidates 4 years ago running. So I don't know.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Mental fitness, but yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to go on to the final aspect of this,
Okay.
which is resistance.
All right.
And Ruth didn't go deeply into it. Ruth Ben-Ghiat didn't go deeply into that. I wanted more from her. I think that her idea is that writing her book, and now she's on a tour in which she's talking about this, is her act of resistance. But I kind of have been meditating on it for the last 2 weeks. How do I resist? The good, the true, and the beautiful. Pursuit of that until you die.
Mm.
I wrote, resistance has to be a regular feature of our lives. She talks about demonstrations. They were big in all of these countries, and to the people risking their lives and losing their lives in many
Yeah.
instances. There's a famous bishop who was martyred in Chile. He was a status quo, um, moderate, friendly guy, comfortable, and Pinochet, I can't remember his name, but he's kind of famous. I saw a movie about him. Pinochet's, disappeared was just a mounting scandal, and people were saying, "Well, where's the Catholic Church on this? Are you just gonna?" And he finally started speaking out and demonstrating. Um, and the Pope at the time, this was in the 50s or 60s, didn't like him doing it. He was upsetting the apple cart, and he
Mm.
persisted, and he was then executed by Pinochet. But his execution brought forth
Right.
increased resistance. You know,
Right.
so that's one example. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Do you know about him?
No. Mm-mm.
Since I've retired, I've read his letters and papers from prison. He was a German pastor in Lutheran in Germany who was strongly anti-Hitler, and so he was um, under suspicion. But then he got involved with a uh, plot to assassinate Hitler. Once
Oh,
it
okay.
started making the news that there was a Holocaust going on, he felt that it was legitimate to do that, and he
Mm.
was hung. He was killed. There's that sort of resistance. I wrote down: push a counter narrative to the official ones. Celebrate truth telling in excellent journalism, quality, documentary films, nonfiction and fiction books, even poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate the feminine spirit as embodied by both women and men. Inclusivity, this is the feminine spirit, in my opinion. Inclusivity, warmth, humor, joy, love of animals, and the neurodivergent and the marginalized among us.
Right.
Promote the good people, the honest workers and companies, the non governmental organizations whose mission is compassion and justice, the good, the true, and the beautiful. Celebrate public art, public ceremony, and of course, be nonviolent. This is
Yeah.
usually required that the resistors face danger and reprisals. Do it anyway. And of course, vote.
Right. Right. Show up. Yep.
Show up.
Yeah.
Show up.
Goes back to the you gotta wake up and show up. Yeah.
Precisely.
Um, bef- Before you can clean up, right? Um, yeah. I I think a lot of there's the demonstration part, and what is you said something else about celebrating truth telling.
Yes.
Um, I feel those two things I feel like have become really difficult because even if you try to celebrate something as truth, there's someone there to tell you it's not true. Even, you know, everybody has this opposing views of what truth is, or we are at a point where my truth is my truth. So, we'll agree to disagree. And I feel like that whole agree to disagree thing is really toxic in terms of having good dialogue that you know if you're not going to, I mean, it's just basically saying we're never going to convince each other of our version of reality,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
that's really hard
I,
to.
I read 9 books by one particular author. His name is Ken Wilber.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he referred to uh, often, one of his key refrains was that we all have a partial truth.
Yeah.
So, when somebody says, well, you're not telling the truth, you can say, well, I have a cogent and important partial truth.
Yeah.
You could say that much in response to
Right. Right.
people countering, you know.
Yeah. Well,
There
and
might, there might be some people who see this episode, Nick,
yeah.
episode 14, and say that we're out to lunch.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And well, and I know people who are on, other sides
Me
of
too.
things, and I would I would never want to alienate good human beings that honestly, and that's what I think's the hardest thing about this authoritarian playbook, and how it's, I know my neighbor, my friend, my family member, to be very good, you know people I want around me for the rest of my life, and would never seek to distance from for any reason of political alignment or who they voted for in one cycle of election, and so I think that when I think about the resistance, it's like, you know being able to come to and say, yes, you have your truth, your part that led you to think this was, you know the path for you, or who you're, whatever, and I have mine, yet we're still here, we're still having good quality of raising our kids together. We're part of a community, but we're part of a village that means more than this person, more than this candidate. I mean, when I
Very
think of
good, Nick.
resistance,
Very good. That's because you're a good-hearted person, Nick.
I think that's our best chance at resistance, is to
Yeah.
really just focus on the fact that, yeah, we can be so opposites on something, even though I think you're out to lunch, you think I'm out to lunch, but when this cycle's over and we move on, um, we're still loving and kind to one another, and that's all that really matters. So
And
that's
when Trump's
so
next 70 felony convictions and next handful of rape convictions, and what has he's never been charged with money laundering. When
right.
the extent of his corruption in that, which is massive, why do you think he's a billionaire?
Yeah.
Um, when that all comes out, then maybe we'll talk again about the subject.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
So
yeah, it's been good. I appreciate you sharing your experience and some thoughts, especially what has driven you to putting some real time in, regarding meditating on, and you know not just jumping to some hasty insider conclusion, but really researching it. So I appreciate your vigilance with that too, and
that's
that
what I
book.
like to do. I mean, it's what I
Yeah,
like to do. It's my temperament.
yeah,
And now that I'm retired, I can do it.
yeah, absolutely. So that's a good book. I'm definitely gonna, like you said, it might be kind of dry. I'm
Slightly.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I may pick it up. I appreciate. Yeah, Strong Men. There we go.
Mussolini to the Present by Ruth Ben Ghiat.
If I say that word yacht, my kids are gonna go nuts.
Oh,
Like,
then you
oh
better. Yeah,
yeah,
you better. Yeah. I
yeah.
even have her signature on here. We went up, afterwards we went up to the two authors signed their books for us.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
always good. Yeah, yeah. I like when you get the chance to meet an author and have them sign the book. That's cool.
very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you to those who have tuned in live this week and Black Raven Meditation. Appreciate your commentary and engagement. That always
Love hearing from you, Core.
brightens our days too. And if you're watching live, thank you. And if you tune in afterward, we appreciate your attention. We know how valuable your time and attention is. So,
Yeah, we actually have 4 people listening right now. I think that's a record for
yeah,
our
well,
for our live thing.
yeah, nice. We'll take it.
Yeah.
All right.
Peace
Well,
out,
stay
brother.
well, everybody. Take care. Peace.